At a company party, I tried to kiss my husband on the dance floor. He pulled away, glaring. "Seriously, stop. You're making a scene. I don't want to be tied down." With a sharp look, I slipped off my ring and placed it on the table. As it clinked down, my single status became the most talked about drama of the evening. "I don't want to be seen as taken anymore, especially not by her." Andrew's voice played from my phone speaker at 5:30 a.m., filling our empty kitchen with words he'd said to Samantha Brooks 3 nights ago at the company party. I'd been standing right behind the potted palm, close enough to smell his cologne mixed with her perfume, close enough to hear him laugh when she called me pathetic. The rest of the recording contained their plans for Singapore, for taking Lily, for destroying everything while I played the obedient wife making his morning espresso. My hand shook as I added 2 sugars to his cup, knowing this would be the last coffee I'd ever make for him. The Georgetown brownstone felt like a mausoleum in the pre-dawn darkness. Every stainless steel appliance, every carefully chosen piece of furniture, every framed photo of our supposedly happy family now seemed like props in a play I hadn't realized I was performing. I set Andrew's cup on the marble counter in its usual spot, right next to the financial newspapers he'd read, while ignoring Lily's chatter about school. 3 nights ago had changed everything, but I had to pretend nothing had changed at all. Before we continue, I want to thank you for witnessing this journey with me. If you believe that betrayal should face consequences and that women deserve justice in their marriages, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps more women find strength in these stories. Lily was still sleeping upstairs, safe in her princess-themed bedroom, unaware that her father was planning to steal her away to Singapore with his business partner. 5 years old, with my eyes and his stubborn chin, she still believed Daddy hung the moon. She didn't know about the missed recitals, the broken promises, or the way he'd started teaching her that Mommy was too emotional whenever I expressed any need for basic affection. The Whitmore and Associates Company Gala had been circled on our calendar for months. Andrew had bought me a new dress for it, black and conservative, nothing that would draw attention away from his rising star status at the firm. I'd spent hours getting ready that night, hoping maybe the formal setting would remind him of our wedding reception 7 years ago, back when he'd held me close on the dance floor and whispered that I was his entire world. Instead, I became the entertainment. When I'd approached him at the bar, touching his sleeve gently and asking for one dance, just one dance with my own husband, he'd yanked his arm away like I was diseased. The entire southwestern corner of the ballroom had heard him say those words about not wanting to be tied down, not wanting to be seen as taken. The champagne flute in my hand had trembled as I absorbed the public rejection. And then something inside me snapped clean in half. I'd pulled off my wedding ring, the platinum band he designed himself when we were young and actually in love, and set it on the marble table with a definitive click. "Consider yourself untied," I'd said, loud enough for everyone to hear. But the real revelation came 20 minutes later when I'd followed him and Samantha to that secluded corner behind the palm fronds. My phone recording captured everything while I stood frozen, learning that my humiliation wasn't spontaneous, but orchestrated. They planned it all. My public rejection was supposed to make me look unstable, make the divorce easier, make the custody battle a foregone conclusion. The kitchen clock ticked towards 6 UAS. Andrew would be down soon, expecting his coffee and his newspapers and his wife to be silent and accommodating. He had no idea I'd spent the past 3 nights documenting everything while he slept. The secret LLC accounts I'd found on his laptop, the emails with Samantha dating back 8 months, the video folder labeled Insurance, containing edited clips of me at my worst moments, carefully curated to paint me as an unfit mother. Through the kitchen window, I could see Mrs. Thompson walking her ancient poodle. She waved, and I waved back, wondering if she'd noticed the moving truck I'd scheduled for next week. The entire neighborhood thought we were the perfect couple. Andrew Harper, the brilliant financial advisor, and his devoted wife, Clara, who'd given up her own career to support his ambitions. They didn't see the nights I slept on the far edge of our California king bed, close enough to feel his warmth, but separated by an Arctic silence. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily Carter, my only real friend in this gilded cage of a life. "Are you okay? Can't stop thinking about what happened at the party." I typed back, "Getting better. Have coffee later?" She responded immediately, despite the early hour. "Name the time. I'll clear my surgery schedule if needed." 3 days before the gala, I'd attended the Children's Hospital charity luncheon alone again. Andrew had promised to meet me there, had sworn he'd make it this time. His empty chair beside me became the topic of whispered conversation among the other wives. I'd lied smoothly about an emergency client meeting while my phone showed his location at a downtown restaurant with Samantha. Of course, Margaret, his mother, had called during dessert to remind me that appearances matter more than feelings in our social circle. She'd known. The whole family had known what he was planning, and they'd all chosen his side before I even knew there were sides to choose. The coffee machine beeped, pulling me back to the present. Andrew's espresso was getting cold. Good. Let him drink it cold. Let him taste something bitter for once. Footsteps on the stairs. Was coming down earlier than usual, probably eager to check the Hong Kong account transfers he thought I didn't know about. I pulled my silk robe tighter and fixed my face into the mask of the obedient wife he expected to see. "Morning," he said, not looking at me as he reached for his cup. "Your coffee is ready?" I replied, my voice steady despite the recording still playing in my mind. He took a sip and grimaced. "It's cold, isn't it?" I turned away to hide my smile. I must have lost track of time. 3 more days. 3 more days of pretending before I exposed everything at the quarterly presentation. 3 more days before the FBI agents I'd been working with arrested him and Samantha in front of everyone who'd witnessed my humiliation. The perfect facade was cracking, but only I could see the fault lines. Andrew left for the office without finishing his cold coffee, without kissing Lily goodbye, without even glancing back at the family he was planning to abandon. The front door closed with its usual quiet click. But today, it sounded like a countdown beginning. Tonight was the Whitmore and Associates annual gala, the social event where Washington's financial elite would gather to congratulate themselves on another year of making rich people richer. Tonight was also when I would test whether I could keep pretending while my world crumbled from the inside out. By force, Lily bounced into my bedroom, her school uniform wrinkled from a day of first-grade adventures. She found me sitting at my vanity, staring at the black cocktail dress hanging on the closet door. Andrew had given it to me 2 Christmases ago, back when he still pretended to care what I wore, back when his gifts came with kisses instead of expectations. "You look pretty, Mommy," Lily said, climbing onto my lap. Her small fingers traced the silver brush on the vanity, the one my mother had given me before she died, before I knew what real loneliness felt like. "Help me with my necklace?" I asked, holding up the strand of pearls Andrew had given me for our 5th anniversary. Lily's face lit up with importance as she stood behind me, her little fingers working the delicate clasp with the concentration of a surgeon. "Why did Daddy leave early without us?" she asked, meeting my eyes in the mirror. "He said we'd all go together." The lie came so easily now. "Important business meeting, sweetheart. You know how Daddy's job is." I sprayed the perfume he once claimed drove him wild, though these days he barely noticed if I was in the room. The scent felt like armor, like maybe if I wore enough of the things he used to love, he might remember why he'd married me. Rachel arrived at 6:30, our regular babysitter, who'd witnessed more of our family's decline than any college student should have to. She didn't comment anymore when Lily asked why Daddy missed bedtime again, didn't raise eyebrows when I came home with red eyes from crying in the car. Tonight, she just squeezed my shoulder and told me I looked beautiful, though we both knew beauty meant nothing in a marriage that had become a business transaction. The Mayflower Hotel ballroom glittered with the kind of ostentatious wealth that made me nauseous. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns across tables draped in ivory silk, each centerpiece worth more than most people's monthly rent. I arrived alone, as usual, scanning the room for Andrew's familiar silhouette. I found him at the bar, Samantha Brooks pressed against his side like she belonged there. Her red nails rested on his forearm, possessive and bold. The crimson dress she wore left little to the imagination, and the way Andrew leaned into her, laughing at something she whispered, told me everything I needed to know about who he wished was his wife. The other guests pretended not to notice, but I caught the sideways glances, the raised eyebrows, the whispered speculations behind champagne flutes. I smoothed my conservative black dress and walked toward them, each step feeling like walking toward my own execution. The jazz quartet played something sultry and romantic, couples already swaying on the dance floor. And I thought about all the dances Andrew and I had shared over the years. Our wedding, where he'd spun me until I was dizzy with joy. Our first anniversary, when he dipped me dramatically just to make me laugh. When had we stopped dancing? Andrew, I said, touching his sleeve gently. Would you dance with me? The entire southwestern section of the ballroom seemed to pause, conversations trailing off as people sensed drama brewing. Samantha's lips curved into a smirk, and she stepped back slightly, giving him room to perform whatever cruelty they'd rehearsed. He yanked his arm away from my touch with such violence that champagne sloshed from a nearby guest's glass. His face contorted with disgust, as if I'd asked him to dance on hot coals instead of a ballroom floor. Seriously, Clara, you're making a scene. His voice carried that particular tone of contempt he usually reserved for incompetent employees. Then came the words that changed everything, louder, ensuring our audience heard every syllable. I don't want to be tied down. The room actually gasped. Someone dropped a fork, the metal clanging against china. My hand moved without conscious thought, sliding my wedding ring off my finger. The platinum band caught the light from the chandeliers as I set it on the marble bar, the soft click audible in the sudden silence. Consider yourself untied, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded when my chest felt like it was caving in. Phones materialized from pockets and purses, everyone documenting the spectacular implosion of the Harper marriage. I stood there for a moment, letting them capture it all before walking toward the ladies' room with my head high, refusing to give them the breakdown they craved. Emily found me leaning against the marble sink, my hands gripping the edge hard enough to hurt. She didn't say anything at first, just held my hair back while I bent over, fighting nausea that had nothing to do with champagne. Half the room thinks you're the bravest woman in Washington, she whispered. The other half thinks you've lost your mind. Maybe both are true, I managed, splashing cold water on my wrists. Through the bathroom door, we heard voices from the accounting department. Did you see Andrew and that Brooks woman? They left together right after Clara's scene, not even trying to hide it anymore. Emily's hand tightened on my shoulder, but I was already moving, slipping out of the bathroom with a calmness I didn't feel. I followed the trail of their expensive perfume and cologne through the hotel's maze of corridors until I heard their voices coming from a private lounge. My heels silent on the thick carpet, I positioned myself behind an ornate decorative screen, close enough to hear everything. My phone recorded every word as the truth spilled out in their casual cruelty. 8 months of planning, and it worked perfectly, Samantha said, her voice thick with satisfaction. She looked completely unhinged, No judge will give her custody after that display. The Hong Kong accounts are ready, Andrew replied. Once the divorce is finalized, we transfer everything. She gets the house with its mortgage. I get freedom and Lily. Poor Clara, Samantha laughed. So pathetically obvious in her devotion. Does she really think you care about that housewife routine? The coffee every morning? The perfect little family dinners? Lily would be better off without her unstable mother, Andrew said. And I bit down on my hand hard enough to draw blood, the copper taste keeping me grounded when I wanted to scream. Clara's too emotional, too needy. A few more public incidents like tonight, and the custody battle won't even be a fight. They kept talking, outlining Singapore plans, custody strategies, and financial manipulations while I stood frozen, my phone capturing evidence that would destroy them both. When they finally left, laughing about my breakdown, I remained behind the screen, blood dripping from my palm, finally understanding that my marriage hadn't just ended tonight. It had been murdered slowly and deliberately by the man who'd promised to love me forever. The blood from my bitten hand dripped onto the hotel carpet as I stumbled out from behind the decorative screen, my legs barely holding me upright. The private lounge where Andrew and Samantha had plotted my destruction still reeked of their perfume and cologne, the ghost of their laughter hanging in the air. I made it to my car somehow, driving home on autopilot while their words played on repeat in my mind. 8 months. They'd been planning this for 8 months while I made his coffee and raised our daughter and pretended our marriage could be saved. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching the storm building inside me. Andrew left for his weekly golf game, at the country club by 7:00, his clubs clanking in the trunk of his Tesla as he backed out without saying goodbye. Lily was at her Saturday art class, giving me 3 precious hours alone in the house, 3 hours to find proof of what I'd overheard. His home office door stood open, inviting. The laptop sat on his mahogany desk, closed, but not locked away in the safe like usual. Careless. Or maybe he thought I was too broken, too stupid to look. My fingers trembled as I opened it, the screen asking for a password like a guardian at the gate. Lily's birthday. Of course he'd used it for everything since she was born. 0614. The screen unlocked, revealing a desktop organized with the precision of someone hiding something. Financial folders lined up in perfect rows, each labeled with client names I recognized from dinner party conversations. The folder named Personal Finance should have contained our joint investments, retirement plans, the mundane paperwork of a shared life. Instead, I found a labyrinth of LLC documents, offshore account statements, and Excel spreadsheets that made my stomach turn. 3 years. For 3 years, he'd been siphoning money from elderly clients at Whitmore and Associates, hiding it in Hong Kong and Bermuda accounts under shell company names. Mrs. Rosenberg's retirement fund, the one she'd entrusted to Andrew after her husband died, showed a balance of 0. Mr. Lee's life savings, meant for his grandchildren's education, had vanished into an account called Phoenix Rising LLC. Each theft meticulously documented, each victim someone who'd trusted my husband with their future. But the spreadsheet that broke me was titled Divorce Settlement Projections. Every asset we owned had been assigned a color, green for him, red for me. The house, mortgaged to 90% of its value, glowed red. The savings accounts, mysteriously depleted over recent months, red. The investment portfolio, transferred to offshore accounts I couldn't touch, green. He'd calculated it down to the penny, including what he'd save in alimony by proving me mentally unfit. A subfolder labeled Insurance caught my eye. Inside, hundreds of video files from our home security system. But these weren't raw footage. Each clip had been edited with professional precision, removing context, creating a narrative of instability that would destroy me in family court. There I was, throwing a wine glass against the wall, but not the part where I'd found lipstick on his collar first. There I was, crying hysterically in the kitchen, but not the part where he'd just told me my father's cancer had returned. There I was, yelling at Lily about spilled juice, but not the part where I'd been up for 36 hours with her stomach flu while he was working late with Samantha. The timestamps revealed the truth. He'd been collecting these moments for over a year, deliberately provoking arguments when the cameras were positioned just right, pushing every button he'd learned in 7 years of marriage. The night he'd accidentally broken my mother's china, the only thing I had left of her, he'd positioned himself perfectly out of frame while capturing my devastated reaction. I copied everything onto a flash drive, then another, then emailed it all to a new account he didn't know existed. My hands moved mechanically while my mind reeled from the calculated cruelty of it all. That evening, Lily chatted through dinner about her art class, showing me the butterflies she'd painted in watercolors. Purple wings with gold spots, she explained, because those were the colors of magic. Then, casual as breathing, she mentioned something that froze my blood. Daddy's friend Samantha is really nice. She bought me the new American Girl doll last week when she picked me up from school. I set down my fork carefully, keeping my voice level. Samantha picked you up from school? Sometimes, when Rachel can't. Lily twirled her spaghetti, oblivious to my rising panic. She takes me for ice cream and asks about my day. She really wants to know if you're feeling okay, Mommy. She says you seem tired lately. The room tilted. My 5-year-old daughter had been interrogated by my husband's mistress, bribed with dolls and ice cream to report on my mental state. Every motherly frustration, every exhausted moment, every time I'd lost patience had been gathered as ammunition. What else does Samantha ask about? Lily shrugged, already losing interest. Stuff, like if you cry a lot or if you get angry. I told her you only cry sometimes when you think I'm asleep. Sunday morning brought Margaret, my mother-in-law, arriving unannounced with her signature knock. 3 sharp raps that sounded like judgment itself. She swept into my foyer wearing Chanel and condescension, her eyes scanning for evidence of the breakdown her son had warned her about. "Clara, darling," she said, though the endearment dripped acid. "You look exhausted. Perhaps you need a little break. I could take Lily for a few weeks. Give you time to rest." Code for psychiatric evaluation. I recognized the setup immediately. "That's kind of you, Margaret, but Lily has school. Summer break is coming." She settled onto my couch uninvited, her posture perfect even while delivering threats. Divorce is so difficult on children, especially when mothers can't provide proper stability. Courts consider these things, you know. The smile she gave me could have cut glass. She was part of it, had been from the beginning. Every family dinner where she'd questioned my parenting, every holiday where she'd noted my emotional volatility, had been building a case against me. "Lily's stability comes from staying in her routine with her mother," I replied, matching her smile with steel of my own. Margaret's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing frustration that I wasn't crumbling as scripted. She left with air kisses and a promise to check in soon, which sounded more like a threat than concern. Margaret's perfume lingered in my foyer long after she left, that expensive French scent she wore like armor against the middle-class world she feared her son had married into. I stood at the window, watching her Mercedes disappear down our tree-lined street, knowing she would report back to Andrew that I seemed unstable, but hadn't broken yet. They needed me to shatter completely, publicly, undeniably. What they didn't know was that I had already started building my own army. Monday morning brought rain that turned Washington into a gray watercolor painting. Lily left for school in her yellow raincoat, splashing through puddles while the bus driver waited patiently. I waved from the doorway like any normal mother, then went inside to check my LinkedIn messages on the laptop I'd hidden in the laundry room, the one place Andrew would never look. A new message waited in my inbox, the sender's name making my breath catch. Rebecca Thornton. The profile photo showed a woman with sharp cheekbones and eyes that could cut glass. Her credentials read like a financial crimes textbook. Forensic accounting certifications, expert witness testimony in federal cases, a reputation for finding money that powerful people wanted to stay hidden. But it was her last name that made my pulse race. Samantha's married name had been Thornton before she reverted to Brooks after her divorce. The message contained just 4 words. I know what they're planning. I typed back, DuPont Circle Cafe, 2 p.m. The cafe sat nestled between a vintage bookstore and a yoga studio, far enough from the financial district that no one from Whitmore and Associates would accidentally wander in. I arrived 20 minutes early, choosing a corner table with clear sightlines to both exits. Old habits from a marriage built on lies. Always know your escape routes. Rebecca Thornton walked in at exactly 2, moving with the controlled precision of someone who had learned to channel rage into purpose. She wore a charcoal pantsuit that meant business, her dark hair pulled back in a bun that looked like it could withstand a hurricane. Without greeting or pleasantry, she sat across from me and slid a flash drive across the table. Samantha destroyed my brother, she said, her voice low and steady. Drained his accounts, planted evidence of affairs that never happened, convinced a judge he was unstable. She took his children, his home, his reputation. By the time she was done, Michael had nothing left but debt and a supervised visitation schedule that treats him like a criminal. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle between us. When I heard she was working her magic on your husband, I started investigating. What I found goes beyond marital destruction. Mrs. Harper, your husband and my former sister-in-law are criminals. The flash drive felt heavy in my palm. What's on this? $4 million in embezzlement from Whitmore and Associates clients. Elderly people mostly. Retirement funds, life savings, inheritances meant for grandchildren. They've been moving money through shell companies for 3 years, using Samantha's financial expertise and your husband's client relationships. Rebecca's jaw tightened. My brother was just practice. You and your husband's clients are the real score. She pulled out her phone, showing me document after document, account statements with massive withdrawals, emails between Andrew and Samantha discussing Project Phoenix, their code name for their new life funded by stolen millions, a paper trail that led through Hong Kong, Bermuda, and finally to Singapore, where American law couldn't touch them. They're not just planning to divorce you, Rebecca continued, scrolling to a new screen. They're planning to disappear. The booking confirmation appeared on her phone. 3 one-way tickets to Singapore, leaving Friday at 11 p.m. The names were aliases, but the credit card trail she'd somehow accessed made the identities clear. Andrew Harper traveling as James Mitchell, Samantha Brooks traveling as Sarah Mitchell, and Lily Harper traveling as Emily Mitchell, with a birth date matching my daughter's exactly. The coffee cup slipped from my hand, shattering against the floor. Hot liquid splashed across my dress, burning through the fabric, but I couldn't feel it. They weren't planning a custody battle. They were planning a kidnapping. The passport, I whispered. Lily doesn't have a passport. Rebecca's expression darkened further. She does now. They applied for an expedited one using forged consent documents. It arrived last week at a P.O. box registered to Samantha's LLC. The cafe staff rushed over with towels, mopping up coffee and broken ceramic, while I sat frozen, the full scope of their plan crystallizing in my mind. Every public humiliation, Every piece of manufactured evidence, every calculated cruelty had been building to this, stealing my daughter and vanishing into a new life funded by the dreams of elderly clients who trusted my husband. Rebecca waited until the staff left, then leaned forward. I've been building this case for 6 months, but I needed someone on the inside, someone with access to evidence I couldn't legally obtain. That someone is you. For the next 3 hours, we sat in that corner booth, documenting everything. Rebecca's expertise filled every gap in my amateur investigation. She showed me how to trace financial transactions, how to preserve digital evidence that would hold up in court, how to build a case that prosecutors couldn't ignore. "We need one more person," she said, pulling out an encrypted phone I hadn't seen before. "Someone with federal connections who can move fast when we're ready." She dialed a number from memory. The voice that answered sounded like gravel mixed with cigarette smoke, the kind of voice that had seen too much and forgotten none of it. "Daniel Carter," the voice said. "Daniel, it's Rebecca. I'm calling in that favor." A pause, then. "The Samantha situation. Worse than we thought. International kidnapping, embezzlement, elderly victims. We need you. Send me what you have. I'll make some calls." Rebecca hung up and turned back to me. "Daniel is former FBI, specialized in financial crimes. He left the bureau 5 years ago but keeps his contacts current. More importantly, he has a daughter, Lily's age. He takes kidnapping threats very personally." The unlikely alliance solidified over cold coffee and shared fury. The betrayed wife with inside access, the vengeful sister-in-law with financial expertise, and the former federal agent with the connections to make justice swift and certain. We exchanged encrypted contact information, established communication protocols, and planned our next moves with the precision of generals preparing for war. As I drove home through rush hour traffic, my phone buzzed with a text from Andrew. "Working late again tonight. Don't wait up." I pulled into our driveway with Andrew's text still glowing on my phone screen. Working late again. The lies came so easily to him now, rolling off his fingers like water. Through the kitchen window, I could see Lily doing homework at the table, Rachel the babysitter helping with math problems. 3 days until Friday. 3 days to pretend my world wasn't ending while secretly ensuring theirs would. Tuesday morning, I began my performance. Mrs. Thompson was watering her garden when I stepped outside in yesterday's clothes, hair unwashed, eyes red from the drops I'd used to simulate crying. She hurried over to the fence, concern etched across her weathered face. "Clara, dear, are you all right?" I let my voice crack perfectly. "Andrew and I are going through something. I'm trying to hold it together for Lily, but it's hard." She patted my hand over the fence while I knew she was cataloging every detail to share at her book club. Within hours, the neighborhood would know Clara Harper was falling apart. Exactly what Andrew needed to hear. By noon, I was sitting in the office of Dr. Thomas Bennett, the therapist Andrew had suggested 6 months ago when he first started laying groundwork for my supposed instability. The good doctor had no idea he was documenting evidence that would backfire spectacularly. "I feel like I'm losing my mind," I told him, letting tears fall strategically. "Andrew says I'm too emotional, too needy. Maybe he's right. Maybe I need help." Dr. Bennett scribbled notes while I painted myself as a woman on the edge, knowing these sessions would be subpoenaed, knowing Andrew would think they proved his case. What he wouldn't know until too late was that Daniel Carter had already spoken with the doctor, explaining the situation, ensuring these notes would actually document a woman under systematic emotional abuse rather than one experiencing a mental breakdown. That evening, Daniel arrived at our house dressed as a cable technician, complete with van and equipment. Andrew barely glanced at him, too busy on his phone with Samantha to notice the FBI-grade recording devices being installed in every room. The tiny cameras were invisible unless you knew exactly where to look, and the audio equipment could pick up whispers from across the house. "Your husband's home office is wired," Daniel murmured as he pretended to check our internet connection. "Living room, kitchen, and the hallway outside Lily's room. Everything feeds to a secure server. Whatever he says, we'll have it." The devices proved their worth immediately. That night, after Lily was asleep, I heard Andrew on a call with Samantha, his voice carrying clearly through the recording app Daniel had installed on my hidden phone. "She called my secretary today about reconciliation," he laughed. "Patricia said she sounded desperate, pathetic. The whole office thinks she's having a breakdown." Samantha's response came through his speakerphone. "Perfect. The more unstable she looks, the easier custody will be. How's Lily?" "I've been preparing her," Andrew said, "telling her mommy's sick, needs help. She asked if you could pick her up from school tomorrow. The kid already likes you better than her own mother." I stood in the hallway, nails digging into my palms, forcing myself not to storm in and confront him. Every word was being recorded, building our case. But hearing him poison my daughter against me felt like swallowing glass. Wednesday morning brought the worst recording yet. I was folding laundry when the app alerted me to activity in the home office. Andrew and Samantha were video calling, and their conversation made bile rise in my throat. "The fertility clinic in Singapore comes highly recommended," Samantha said. "We could start trying as soon as we're settled. Lily needs a sibling, and I want our children to be close in age." "Our children," Andrew replied. "Lily will adjust. Kids are resilient. A year from now, she'll barely remember Clara." The laundry basket hit the floor as my hands went numb. They weren't just stealing my daughter. They were planning to erase me entirely from her life, replace me with a new mother, new siblings, a new existence where I never mattered at all. That afternoon, I found Ethan Sullivan at a dive bar near the university, his laptop open among empty beer bottles, applying for jobs he'd never get with his community college degree and mounting debt. He looked up when I sat across from him, recognizing me from the company parties where he'd worked tech support. "Mrs. Harper, what are you doing here?" I slid $500 in cash across the sticky table. "I need 5 minutes during tomorrow's quarterly presentation. 5 minutes to show something important." His eyes widened at the money. "That could get me fired." "Ethan, they pay you minimum wage to run systems worth millions. They treat you like furniture. I'm offering you a month's rent for 5 minutes of courage." He glanced around the bar, then pocketed the cash. "What do you need?" We spent 2 hours rehearsing the technical details. He would trigger the presentation override at exactly 10:45 a.m. during the height of Andrew's keynote about trust in financial services. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. If the main system failed, I had backup drives. If security moved too fast, I knew where every fire alarm in the building was located. Thursday evening arrived with the weight of a funeral. I stood in my kitchen preparing chicken parmesan, Andrew's favorite, while Lily set the table with the good dishes she loved to use. The recording devices captured every moment as we sat down to our last dinner as a family, though only I knew it. "This is excellent," Andrew said, cutting into his chicken with precision. "You've outdone yourself." Lily beamed at the rare moment of parental harmony. "Can we have ice cream for dessert? The mint chip kind?" "Of course, sweetheart," Andrew replied, reaching over to ruffle her hair. "Whatever you want." He went on to discuss weekend plans with enthusiasm that would have fooled anyone who didn't know about the Friday night flight to Singapore. He promised to help Lily with her science project, to take her to the zoo, to finally teach her to ride the bike gathering dust in our garage. Each lie cut deeper than the last, but I smiled and nodded, playing the oblivious wife one final time. After dinner, I watched from the doorway as he tucked Lily into bed, kissing her forehead and promising her the world he planned to steal. She wrapped her small arms around his neck, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw something flicker across his face. Regret, doubt. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Andrew closed Lily's door with the gentle click of a man who had no idea he'd just said goodbye forever. I stood in the hallway darkness, watching his silhouette move toward our bedroom, and felt nothing but cold determination. Tomorrow would end everything. Dawn came at 5:15 a.m., the sky outside our bedroom window the color of old iron. Andrew slept beside me, one arm thrown across the space where I used to curl against him, his breathing deep and untroubled. I slipped from bed without disturbing him, my movements practiced from months of early morning insomnia. The black suit hung in the guest room closet where I'd hidden it, the same severe cut I'd worn to my father's funeral 3 years ago, when Andrew had held my hand through the service and whispered that he'd never let me face anything alone again. The mirror reflected a woman I barely recognized. Dark circles shadowed my eyes despite the concealer, and my cheekbones stood out sharp enough to cut. But my hands were steady as I applied lipstick the color of old blood, and my voice was clear when I woke Lily for school. "Special day today?" she asked, noting my formal outfit while eating her cornflakes. "Just some business to take care of," I said, braiding her hair with fingers that had done this 1,000 times, might never do it again if things went wrong. "Rachel, we'll pick you up after school today." "Not Daddy's friend, Samantha?" "No, sweetheart, not Samantha." The school bus pulled away at 7:45, Lily waving from her window seat, backpack bouncing with each bump in the road. Andrew left 20 minutes later, humming something tuneless as he adjusted his tie in the hallway mirror. He called out a casual goodbye, already focused on his keynote presentation about integrity in financial services. The irony would have been amusing if it weren't about to destroy him. Daniel's text arrived at 8:30. "Assets frozen, warrants signed, agents in position." Rebecca followed immediately. "Financial evidence delivered to SEC, trading suspended on all accounts." I typed back, "Heading to Whitmore now." The drive downtown felt both endless and too quick. Every red light gave me time to second guess. Every green light pushed me closer to the point of no return. The Whitmore and Associates building rose against the morning sky like a glass and steel tombstone, its revolving doors swallowing employees who had no idea they were about to witness corporate history. Security recognized me, of course. Tom, the morning guard who always asked about Lily, waved me through with a sympathetic smile. "Mrs. Harper, nice to see you. Here for the presentation?" "Wouldn't miss it," I said, my heels clicking across the marble floors that reflected overhead lights like pools of water. The elevator ride to the 10th floor felt like ascending to judgment. Other employees joined at various floors, their chatter about quarterly projections and weekend plans washing over me like white noise. They had no idea they were sharing an elevator with a bomb about to detonate. Ethan stood at his station outside the main conference room, his hands visibly trembling as he checked credentials on his tablet. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second, long enough for him to nod almost imperceptibly. The USB drive was ready, his finger hovering over the system controls. We were locked and loaded. The conference room was already 3/4 full when I entered. 300 chairs arranged in perfect rows facing a stage where Andrew would soon stand. The massive presentation screens behind the podium currently displayed the Whitmore and Associates logo, but in 17 minutes, they would show something very different. I chose a seat in the back row, far corner, with clear sightlines to both exits. Around me, Washington's financial elite chatted over coffee and pastries, their expensive suits and careful smiles hiding the same predatory instincts that had allowed Andrew and Samantha to steal millions without anyone noticing. Samantha entered at 10:25, wearing a red dress that probably cost more than Ethan made in 3 months. She swept past my row without noticing me, too focused on taking her position in the front row where the senior partners sat. Her phone was out, fingers flying across the screen, probably confirming tonight's flight details, making sure their escape plan remained intact. Andrew took the stage at exactly 10:30, his presence commanding immediate attention. The room fell silent as he adjusted the microphone, his wedding ring catching the stage lights. He still wore it, maintaining the facade until the very end. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Whitmore and Associates' quarterly presentation. Today, I want to talk about something fundamental to our business: trust. The word hung in the air like a bad joke. He clicked his presentation remote, and graphs appeared showing the firm's growth, client retention rates, portfolio performance. His voice was smooth, confident, the voice of a man who'd never faced a consequence he couldn't buy his way out of. Our clients trust us with their futures, he continued, pacing the stage with practiced ease. Their retirements, their children's educations, their dreams. That trust is sacred. It's what separates us from our competitors. It's what makes Whitmore and Associates more than just another financial firm. 10:43, 2 minutes. Integrity isn't just a buzzword here, Andrew said, building to his climax. It's the foundation of every relationship, every transaction, every decision we make. 10:44. Ethan's hand moved to his keyboard. When clients choose us, they're not just choosing returns or performance. They're choosing honesty. They're choosing transparency. They're choosing 10:45. The screens behind him went black for a single heartbeat. Then they exploded with evidence. Bank statements showing millions siphoned from elderly clients filled the left screen. The center screen displayed emails between Andrew and Samantha, their plans laid out in their own words. Mrs. Lee's portfolio is perfect. She'll never notice. Move another $500K from the Rosenberg account. Clara's too stupid to figure this out. The right screen showed security footage from our home. Andrew and Samantha in his office, cash spread across his desk, both of them laughing. The audio came through crystal clear. 4 million and counting. Singapore won't know what hit it. But the crown jewel played on all three screens simultaneously, a recorded conversation from Tuesday night. Andrew's voice. Lily's the key. Once we have her in Singapore, Clara can't touch us. Samantha's voice. The fake passport worked perfectly. She'll adjust. Kids forget quickly. Andrew's voice. The clients are just collateral damage. They're old. They won't need the money long. The conference room erupted. Chairs scraped against carpet as people stood. Phones appeared in every hand, and shouts of disbelief filled the air. Andrew stood frozen on stage, his face cycling through expressions: confusion, recognition, terror. Samantha tried to run. As the conference room erupted in chaos, she bolted from her front row seat toward the side exit, her red dress a flash of desperation against the neutral corporate decor. But the doors opened before she reached them, revealing Agent Carter and 3 other FBI agents who moved with the practiced calm of people who had done this many times before. She stumbled backward in her designer heels, her face crumbling as she realized there was nowhere to go. Samantha Brooks, you're under arrest for embezzlement, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and wire fraud, Agent Carter said, his voice cutting through the pandemonium. The handcuffs clicked around her wrists with a sound that seemed to echo off the conference room walls. Andrew remained frozen on stage, his mouth opening and closing without sound, his presentation remote still clutched in his hand. When 2 agents approached him, he didn't resist, didn't speak, just stared at the screens, still displaying his crimes in high definition. The handcuffs looked wrong on him somehow, too permanent for a man who thought consequences were for other people. Margaret, who had been sitting with the board members in the VIP section, stood up suddenly, her face the color of ash. She swayed once, twice, then collapsed into the arms of Richard Whitmore himself, the founding partner who looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Someone called for medical assistance while Margaret's perfect composure finally shattered completely. The federal case proceeded with stunning speed. Within 2 weeks, we were sitting in the District of Columbia courthouse, the same building where high-profile cases had been tried for decades. Prosecutor James Sullivan, a man who looked like he'd been carved from granite and righteous fury, treated my husband's crimes as personal affronts to decency itself. I spent 3 hours on the witness stand, methodically presenting evidence while Andrew watched from the defendant's table. His attorney, a slick man named William Cross, who charged $1,500 an hour, tried everything. He suggested I was a vindictive wife seeking revenge, implied I had manufactured evidence, even tried to paint me as an accomplice who got cold feet. But the evidence spoke louder than his objections. "Mrs. Harper," Sullivan asked during redirect, "did you know about your husband's activities before the Gala incident?" "I suspected something was wrong," I said, looking directly at Andrew. "But I never imagined he was stealing from elderly clients. I thought he was just having an affair." The elderly victims testified via video link from a secure location, their faces filling the courtroom screens as they described trust betrayed and futures stolen. Mrs. Lee wept as she explained how the money Andrew took was meant to pay for her husband's cancer treatment. Mr. Rosenberg's voice shook as he detailed how he'd have to sell his home of 40 years because his retirement savings had vanished into offshore accounts. When 77-year-old Mrs. Thompson testified that she trusted Andrew because he reminded her of her own son, one of the jurors, a grandmother herself, had to excuse herself from the courtroom. The weight of their pain filled the space like smoke, choking any sympathy anyone might have felt for the defendants. The worst part came when Child Services brought their report about Lily. I sat in a small room adjacent to the courtroom while Dr. Elizabeth Carter, a specialist in childhood trauma, interviewed my daughter in another room. Through the glass partition, I could see Lily sitting at a child-sized table, drawing pictures while answering questions I couldn't hear. My hands shook for the entire 90 minutes, Rebecca beside me, offering silent support. When Dr. Carter finally emerged, her expression was professionally neutral, but kind. "Lily's remarkably resilient," she said, sitting across from me. "She's been aware that something was wrong for months. Children often know more than we think." She mentioned that Daddy's friend Samantha promised her a new life with ponies and beaches, but she didn't want to go without Mommy. Relief flooded through me so fast I felt dizzy. "What did she say about Andrew?" "She's confused about why Daddy did bad things. She asked if he was going to jail because he didn't love her anymore. We've assured her that adult choices aren't her fault, but she'll need ongoing support to process this." The court granted me emergency sole custody that afternoon. The judge, a stern woman named Catherine Sullivan, no relation to the prosecutor, didn't mince words. "The evidence clearly shows the defendant's plan to abduct this child and flee the country. The father will have no unsupervised contact with the minor child until further review, which, given the expected length of incarceration, means effectively never." That night, Lily crawled into my bed for the first time in months. "Is Daddy really a bad man?" she asked, her small voice muffled against my shoulder. I held her close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo, and chose my words carefully. "Sometimes people we love make terrible choices that hurt everyone around them. Daddy made some very bad choices, but that doesn't mean he never loved you. Will he come back?" "Not for a very long time, sweetheart." She was quiet for so long I thought she'd fallen asleep. Then, in the smallest voice, "Did I make him leave?" "No, baby. Never. This is not your fault. None of this is your fault." The jury deliberated for exactly 3 hours and 17 minutes. I know because I counted every second, sitting in the courthouse cafeteria with Rebecca and Daniel, drinking coffee that tasted like burnt rubber and trying not to imagine Andrew somehow talking his way out of this. When they called us back, the foreman, a middle-aged man who looked like he fixed cars for a living, stood with the verdict. His voice was steady, certain as he read. "We find the defendant Andrew Harper guilty on all counts. The same for Samantha Brooks, guilty on all counts." Judge Patricia Thornton, who had presided with the kind of quiet authority that made lawyers nervous, delivered the sentences without emotion. "Mr. Harper, you are hereby sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for embezzlement, wire fraud, and conspiracy to kidnap a minor." Andrew's legs gave out. His lawyer had to help him stay standing. "Miss Brooks, you are sentenced to 10 years in federal prison with permanent revocation of all financial licenses." The judge ordered full restitution to the victims, though everyone knew most of the money had disappeared into accounts that would take years to trace and recover. She also fast-tracked our divorce proceedings, noting that incarceration for federal crimes constituted obvious grounds. Margaret didn't attend the sentencing. Someone told me later that she checked into a private psychiatric facility in Maryland, unable to face the destruction of her family's reputation. The Harper name, once synonymous with financial success in Washington, had become shorthand for greed and betrayal. The divorce papers arrived at my lawyer's office on a Tuesday morning 6 months after the sentencing, signed by Andrew from federal prison with handwriting that looked shaky, defeated. I signed my name with steady hands, feeling nothing but relief as 7 years of marriage dissolved into legal documentation. The Georgetown brownstone would stay mine despite the crushing mortgage, and Lily would remain with me without any custody complications. Freedom tasted like bitter coffee in a lawyer's conference room, but it was still freedom. We moved out of the brownstone 2 weeks later. The house had become a mausoleum of bad memories, every room haunted by lies I hadn't seen, betrayals I hadn't suspected. The downtown apartment we moved into was a third of the size, a 2-bedroom rental in a building with thin walls and temperamental elevators. But when Lily ran through the empty rooms that first day, her laughter echoing off bare walls, it already felt more like home than the brownstone ever had. Rebecca and I signed the partnership papers for our consulting firm in my new kitchen, using a card table I'd bought at a thrift store as our desk. Harper and Thornton Financial Consulting specialized in one thing: helping women protect their assets during divorce, particularly when financial abuse was involved. Rebecca brought her forensic accounting expertise. I brought my hard-won knowledge of how predators hide money and manipulate systems. Our first client came through word of mouth, a pediatrician whose husband, a banker, was hiding assets in cryptocurrency. We found $2 million he'd claimed didn't exist, and suddenly our phones wouldn't stop ringing. Women from across Washington, then Maryland, then neighboring states, all with the same story: husbands who thought they were too smart to get caught. Lily adjusted to our new life with the resilience only children possess. Her new school didn't know about the scandal, didn't whisper about her father in federal prison. She made friends who came over for playdates in our small apartment, their parents grateful for a safe place where kids could be kids. The walls became galleries for her artwork, butterflies and rainbows and the occasional sad picture that reminded me healing wasn't linear. Piano lessons continued, but now with Mrs. Park from the community center instead of the expensive private instructor Andrew had insisted on. Lily didn't seem to notice the difference, filling our evenings with scales and simple melodies that sounded like hope. Sometimes I'd catch her playing Fur Elise, the piece from her recital Andrew had missed, and she'd stop mid-note, lost in thought. "Do you miss the big house?" I asked her one evening as we ate takeout Chinese at our small dining table, the city lights twinkling through our window like earthbound stars. She considered this while twirling lo mein on her chopsticks. "The big house was lonely. This one is cozy, and you're here more." Her 6th birthday arrived on a Saturday in March, the first birthday without the shadow of Andrew's presence or broken promises. I baked a chocolate cake from a box mix, lopsided and imperfect, decorated with grocery store frosting and candles that wouldn't stand straight. Lily declared it the best cake ever because I made it myself. 12 kids from her class crammed into our apartment, transforming it into cheerful chaos. Emily arrived with her twins, helping me manage the sugar-fueled mayhem while we watched our children play games that didn't require expensive equipment or elaborate planning. Pin the tail on the donkey using a poster I'd drawn myself. Musical chairs with Lily's playlist. Simple joy that cost almost nothing but meant everything. When Lily blew out her candles, her eyes squeezed tight with concentration, I knew she wasn't wishing for her father's return. Later, she told me she'd wished for a puppy, which seemed like the kind of problem I could actually solve. 3 weeks after the birthday party, I sat at my desk, a real one now, bought secondhand but solid, and wrote Andrew a letter. 3 pages of everything I'd wanted to say but couldn't during the trial. How his betrayal had taught me to trust myself instead of him. How his cruelty had revealed strength I never knew existed. How his absence had shown Lily and me that we were already complete without him. The letter sat on my desk for a week, the envelope addressed to his federal facility in West Virginia. Every morning I'd look at it, considering whether sending it would bring closure or just reopen wounds. Finally, on a rainy Thursday, I held it over the kitchen sink and lit it with a match. The paper curled and blackened, our past turning to ash and washing down the drain. The future deserved my energy more than his ghost did. His letters arrived monthly at first, forwarded from my lawyer's office. I recognized his handwriting on the envelopes, probably full of justifications or pleas or manipulations. They went straight into a box in the closet, unopened. Eventually, they slowed to every few months, then stopped altogether. Samantha never wrote it all, probably too proud to acknowledge what she'd become. 2 years after that horrible gala, on an unseasonably warm October evening, I stood on our small balcony while Lily practiced piano inside. The melody of Moonlight Sonata drifted through the sliding door, more complex than anything she could have played before. Rebecca had texted about a new client, a teacher whose contractor husband had been hiding renovation kickbacks in offshore accounts. The Washington skyline spread before me, buildings turning gold in the setting sun. Somewhere in West Virginia, Andrew sat in a federal cell, probably still believing he was the victim. Somewhere else, Margaret lived with her shame. Somewhere, all the people who'd whispered at that gala had moved on to new scandals. But here, in this small apartment with secondhand furniture and my daughter's art gallery walls, we had built something real. Not rich by Georgetown standards, but wealthy in ways that couldn't be stolen or embezzled. Lily had learned that love shouldn't hurt, that promises should be kept, that small apartments could hold more happiness than empty mansions. The puppy, a rescue mutt Lily named Sunshine, barked from inside, probably begging for dinner. Rebecca's text buzzed again, this time about hiring an assistant because we had too many clients. Lily transitioned into a piece I didn't recognize, something she was composing herself. She told me proudly, "If this story of betrayal and justice had you holding your breath, hit that like button right now." My favorite part was when Clara placed her wedding ring on that marble table, knowing she was about to expose everything. What was your favorite moment of revenge? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more gripping stories of triumph like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.